you notice the mood lighting that I set up? It's Maxxxine style.
Yeah, it's very, yeah.
I tried to capture the 80s.
Very sleazy.
And we're still wearing the denim from the movie. But yeah, so we're back. We're recording again.
Oh, hello.
Yes. It's I feel like we should always, we don't always have to, but we should introduce ourselves. My name's Eli.
I'm Denise.
And we are not film professionals. We just enjoy films.
We just watch a lot of them.
And we like to eat.
We do like that.
Right. And so...
Indeed we do.
Yeah. So we're going to talk movies and food, but we just watched...
In no professional capacity.
No, in no professional capacity. Yeah, in any way. But we just got home from watching Maxxxine. Maxxxine?
No, I think just Maxxxine.
Yeah. But the way they spell it.
Yeah.
So yeah, we just got home from watching Maxxxine at the historic Texas Theater, which great venue for this movie.
Perfect location, actually.
Yes, it was a lot of fun. And we did not talk about the movie on the way home.
Which made me crazy a little bit because it was a long drive and I wanted to talk about it.
Yeah. So let's talk about it.
So we saved it all for this.
We did. Let's get to it.
You want to do like a quick, what's it about, etc.?
Yeah, we can do the quick synopsis. Hopefully, if you're watching Maxxxine, you know. Well, and I will say, I don't think you actually had to have watched X or Pearl, but Maxxxine is the third movie in the, I guess
trilogy.
It is a trilogy. It is really the Maxxxine story trilogy.
Yeah.
Because I mean, even though it doesn't feel like X was actually about her.
No.
It kind of, well, you know what? It is not, because Pearl is not about Maxxxine at all.
Right.
And there's no relationship.
It just has loose thematic whatever. I mean, it is her though from X, the same character.
It is the same character, but it is.
Anyway, regardless, they're very loosely connected, so you don't really need to watch one to watch the other.
So I guess you could just say it's the trilogy of the story. Not really anything else other than that. Like
universe, I don't know.
Well, no, it's a story.
Yeah,
right?
I guess so.
Yeah, it's just tying everything together. And so yeah, Maxxxine is the third movie by Ty West that follows the storyline or the story universe of one of the characters of that story, Maxxxine Minx.
Maxxxine Minx.
Or I guess Miller is her real last name.
Right.
But yeah, so the movie is basically about her in the 80s having survived a horrific event out in Texas.
Which is detailed in the movie X.
Right. Maxxxine is the lone survivor.
Yes.
Yeah. She is the lone survivor of that.
Spoiler. For X.
Yeah, for X. Sorry. Yeah, so she's the lone survivor from the movie X, even though she flees the scene and nobody knows that she was actually there.
Right.
Well, that's not true. They actually did know that she was there at some point because the film that they were making, she's on film.
Yes.
But she's not there. But anyway, that's sort of to tie in. This is the sequel to that movie. And I guess I'd have to go back and remember when X takes place. But I think it's late 70s.
It can't have been too far from the events of Maxxxine. But yeah, I think it was more late 70s. And Maxxxine was, I think it said 85 in the beginning.
Yes, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
Because then she would have been, because she talks about in the movie she's 33, so that would have put her probably
20s, early 20s.
27 or something. So yeah, Maxxxine has now made her way to Hollywood, which was her intent in the movie X. And so now we're following her storyline back through where she's made her way to Hollywood through the adult film genre.
Right.
She is an adult movie star.
She does other various little side jobs also besides that.
Yeah.
She's a dancer. She's one of the, I don't know what those places are called. Like a,
Oh, peep show.
oh, okay.
That's what, yeah, peep show where you pay like a quarter or you put in money for like.
Yeah, and then the window goes up.
Yeah, well, I guess the idea behind that reason why I think in London they call them peep shows because you put in a coin and then you can hear the like it's like it. You can hear the ticking and then like at a certain point the screen just goes up.
Oh, okay, but
So
it's live also.
it is live dancing. Okay. I think if you remember in that movie, what's it? Don't Open Before Christmas or yeah, it was the one with the killer Santa in London.
Oh, vaguely, yeah.
There's a woman who works in a peep show.
Okay.
And she's like talking to guys behind glass.
Oh, right. Okay.
And she's talking about the rules because I think London was the originator of that kind of stuff of like their way of working around all the rules, which is basically like as long as we're behind glass and there's no touching because you can't touch and it's only for a short amount of time. So they kind of tease you
it's
up
like
to the moment.
It's
and
like
then,
timed.
Yeah, it's timed.
Oh, that's funny.
Like literally I think you can hear the like the ticking. And then, like, when the time's up, the screen goes up. And I think usually at that point, the women, like, take off their top right as the screen's going up.
Oh,
or
gotcha.
whatever.
So you have to pay for more to see
Exactly.
more. Got it.
The idea of a peep show, right? It's so I believe I don't know. My history may be wrong, so I apologize.
My history of
the peep show is incorrect. But yeah, so she works peep shows. She works
adult films.
She works at a club,
maybe at like the strip club too.
I think so.
She was just passing through.
Yeah. Well, that's where she got her start, like in X.
Right.
So she probably still works that.
That's true.
She's probably just hustling to.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's grimy 80s LA, so she's doing everything she can.
Yeah. And so she is trying to break into Hollywood doing normal movies or just film, but she has constantly been pushed away because of the fact that she's a adult star, I guess you could say, and so nobody really wants to work with her. But she finally gets a break and gets cast in a movie. But lo and behold, going on in Hollywood, I'm trying to remember too if the Night Stalker. I want to say so. There is a Night Stalker or this person who has taken the title of Night Stalker, and they are killing women in the Hollywood area. And I can't remember if this Night Stalker was a real.
Yeah, he was.
Okay, yeah.
He was a real serial killer.
Okay, that's what I was trying to remember, and I want to say that it was, and I don't know if they use that for the. I assume that they use that for the movie because like some of the clips were real.
Yeah.
But I guess they fictionalized that part. I don't know if they ever caught the Night Stalker.
I think they did. Let me look it up. It was like Richard Ramirez was his name. Let me look him up real quick.
Yeah, and so in the movie, though, they fictionalize sort of that during this time period, the Night Stalker is killing these women, and it's usually like women of the night or people that are walking the streets or whatever. And it's funny because they sort of tie in the satanic panic into all of this in that.
Well, yeah, have like her kind of having a foot in the door in Hollywood. She sees all the protests of like anti-violence in movies, like censorship in books and media, just all kinds of stuff. And even did you see like even in board games or whatever?
Yeah, it was like
there was a flash of a newspaper.
I wonder if this will lead to video games. But
so violent.
Yeah, and it's funny because I guess it's supposed to take place during the Reagan era because they do show clips with Reagan at the beginning. But yeah, so it seems like they also tie in with the Night Stalker, like, oh, this Night Stalker may be a satanic person doing these for satanic reasons. Yeah. And so let's tie that directly back to the movies. Right. And not even adult movies, just movies in general. Right. And so it's the classic, like, conservative type people that are trying to shut down art because they're just worried and don't understand it. And so Maxxxine is surrounded by that, but in the news you're seeing that the Night Stalker is on the prowl and has killed a number of women at this point. And so so that is something that Maxxxine is going to have to like deal with clearly. And so Maxxxine gets a break, but her past the events that happened during the movie X seem to be catching up with her through some sort of unknown origin. Like somebody is harassing her.
Yeah, kind of taunting that they know what she did and they know what happened,
Yeah.
and that just all kinds of background knowledge that nobody should have.
Right. So whether whoever this person is, whether it's like somebody in the police or something, because they are sending her messages and they are sending her videotapes with clips of the actual
Yeah.
like
Very threatening manner.
yeah of threatening to expose her of her history.
Right.
And so we kind of learn a little bit about who is tracking her down, and it eventually leads to who the Night Stalker is, but we won't spoil that. But just speaking through the paces of the movie and what we liked about the movie, I think much like when we talked about Late Night with the Devil, they really nailed the aesthetic. Like for this, it's so good.
I gotta say, they captured the era so well. And I know that's been kind of a trend, very kind of nostalgic. Like I feel like Stranger Things in a big way, like kicked a lot of that off, of like just this nostalgic view of like, oh, the 80s, it was such a simpler time.
Yeah.
But I think a lot, it's funny because I think a lot of movies and shows miss a lot of like the key points of what the 80s actually looked like, actually felt like. Like they'll get the clothes right, but they won't get the hair right, or they won't get the makeup. There's not this real commitment to how terrible a lot of things looked. You know, like the crimped hair and the crazy makeup and the giant shoulder pads. No shade, you know, everybody was a victim to that. So
it was just the choice
like
of the
everybody,
era.
everybody wore stuff like that. And the Aquanet and all that stuff. And I feel it's so funny because I think a lot of movies that we've seen, a lot of shows, more current shows that try to replicate that, they get the kind of the overall feel for it, but they'll miss something key, like how big the hair was back then.
Yeah.
And I think that really takes me out sometimes when they're trying to pretend it's supposed to be in the 80s. And I think Ty West is such a master of like kind of duplicating that feel for the era.
Yeah.
Like even though it wasn't over the top as far as like the big crazy hair or the bright garish makeup or anything like that. It wasn't too over the top in that sense, but I feel like he really nailed down the culture somehow, and I can't even, because he did the same thing with House of the Devil. I feel like that movie straight up felt like it could have been made in the 70s.
Yeah.
It was kind of bizarre to watch, almost knowing that it wasn't made in the 70s.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. And I think it's funny because I feel like you were saying, Stranger Things or other movies that we've seen trying to replicate the 80s. There's this imagination of what the 80s, or what people think they imagine the 80s to have been. And they think it's like ironic, bad dressing, you know, which, yes, it was. But at the same time, like, none of us thought it was ironic.
Right.
Like, we just,
totally,
it's what we had.
And
it wasn't like we weren't being ironic.
We weren't trying to be tongue in cheek about it.
Right.
It's just the fad of the time.
Right.
Similar in the way that mullet, for some reason, is a fad now again.
Yeah, and I think it's because people are trying to act like, oh, look at me, I'm so, like, being goofy.
I'm being totally ironic about this
right.
look. When back then, that wasn't really a thing. Like,
no.
You kind of wanted to look like
as best as you could.
Which is like, in your mind, how everybody else was looking.
Exactly. It was just the fashion of the time.
Totally.
That's really what it was. And I feel like Ty West does a good job of understanding that.
Yeah.
Because I think he's younger than I am by about maybe like
a little bit, I feel like.
I think maybe like 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
But so that means he would have spent a decent amount of time in the 80s going into the 90s. So that means he would have been in high school like in the mid 90s, or probably mid to latter 90s. So that means he would have spent
about right.
he would have spent some of his childhood in the 80s. And I'm sure he has pictures, much like I do,
Yeah.
with like polo shirts tucked in, and like, my little husky pants and
the
whatnot.
khakis.
Well, not even the khakis, like husky pants, in that they had a waistband that was kind of a little bit of rubber bandish because I was fat. And that's just like, it literally was a size, right? It was a size that was called husky because it's like, oh, so your kid's outside of a range. And then we have like high waters and things like that, where it's like, it's not because we called them high waters. Like, we called them that as kids because that's what we thought they looked like. But they
what
weren't.
Is it?
High waters were like basically the pant bottoms. Like, if you sat down or if you were running, like they ended up like, I guess, like, I don't know, maybe sometimes there's women's pants that do this, but like basically your socks are exposed and your ankles are exposed.
Oh, because like the hem is short.
It's technically it's technically right when you're standing.
Oh, when you're standing. Okay.
Then when you sit down, it's like
I've
whatever.
never heard that before.
And so like as kids, because we grow fast when you're kids, and it's not like we can afford lots of pants. You kind of stretch up and out, and so they end up like, they call them high waters, right? Because they would be like, oh, lift up your pants when you got to walk through high water, right?
Oh, that's so funny. I've never heard that before.
You don't want the bottoms to get wet.
Yeah.
And so that's why we would call them that. But lo and behold, it's because, a lot of us were poor. It's not like we can afford buying tons and tons of pants, right? Yeah. So, but anyway, just sort of that overall aesthetic and look of the 80s, like, he hits, like, in so many ways in this movie.
Yeah, he really did. Without going too over the top. Yeah. Honestly,
everything felt it was right.
It was very tone perfect.
Yeah, the only thing I would say that in some ways at times felt a little off was the environment. I mean, I liked it, but I could tell. I mean, maybe it's just more me, at least from what I could guess. And it's, I'll give it credit where credit's due, right? It seems like they did as much as they could with what they could as an A24 movie, because they probably wanted the budget to be very, very low.
Oh yeah.
But like, parts of Hollywood didn't seem like, it seemed like they were just filming on regular on Hollywood Boulevard, whereas we've seen other movies like Quentin Tarantino's like
Once
Upon a Time, like, he had the budget to actually recreate strips of Hollywood.
That's like a separate level.
No, I know. but that helps sell that that look, right? And then there are movies that were filmed in the 80s, like Angel, like the Angel series, that take place on the strip during the 80s, and you get a real sense of how packed it was, how dirty it was, how much neon was everywhere. All the
people that were rambling around.
Just walking around, because it wasn't a tourist attraction. It was more like for locals, you know, like that's where you go get prostitutes. That's where you would go to peep shows. It's where you would go to XXX shows. I mean, it was part of the city, right? Yeah. It wasn't what it is now. And even now it's not great, but so it lacked a little bit of that. But I mean, again, I wasn't expecting that. I was surprised to even see what they were able to do.
Yeah.
But it took a little bit away. But I did like, basically they did a couple of probably CG shots where they were able to show some like old Hollywood Boulevard, and then everything else was a little bit more tighter and out of focus. And that's fine.
They definitely like pulled in a lot of the shots so that they didn't have to do a lot of that kind of set design. But I don't know. I felt like it still sold it pretty well.
No, it still worked.
If you weren't looking for that kind of stuff anyway.
Right. I think it's funny because like what I was going to say is I feel the bar for old Hollywood is very high because of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So it's almost unfair to sort of judge. Yeah. But like, it was not bad. I really liked it. Like the cars and stuff, which again, I think
the cars really sold it.
I think the cars, I mean, mostly because I kind of understand how a lot of this works. I think a lot of those cars were CG, and that just kind of speaks to where we're at in that that's a cheaper way to do it. And I think that's
than
totally
trying to find each and every car.
Absolutely. And but like you said, it helps sell the atmosphere or whatever. Yeah. And then when they kind of are on the on the Universal lot, which which was super dope. I would assume that I don't even know who released the movie. I don't know if it was Universal, but maybe they just like.
Oh, I didn't think about.
Maybe they just got permission to do it there. But yeah, I love that. I loved I love the video store, obviously.
Yeah.
I very much love the video store.
I feel like that was a gimme for you.
I think that they felt like they kind of had to put it in there.
Well, I think it really kind of emphasized to the kind of people that she kind of surrounded herself with, or even the kind of the type of people that Ty West identified with growing up and kind of loving that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of those little kind of nods to how much he loves film and how much of Hollywood or LA is part of how he sees film. I think it was really cool, like the little touches that he does.
Yeah, it's funny. It was very much a film. Like it was a nod to Hollywood 80s as much as it, like 80s movies as much as it was the third movie of the trilogy. It does show here that Universal Pictures was the distributor for basically every territory outside of the U.S. So I'm sure they cut him a deal.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Which they worked with Jordan Peele and I think some other folks too.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would
That
imagine
makes sense.
they cut him a favor and we're like, yeah, you can, because I thought that in itself, like you don't have to do anything to the Universal lot. Like I'm so happy that you and I got to go for Halloween Horror Nights a couple of years back, so that you could actually see.
It was pretty cool.
Some of the lots.
It was kind of funny being there and seeing scale wise how small everything actually feels. Like it still feels like there's the streets of like quote unquote New York and that square where Marty McFly runs around, and that was cool. And even the Bates Motel, which was funny, but they were like, oh yeah, that's like a tiny replica of the Bates, the actual house of Psycho. But yeah, it was really neat seeing that in the movie, knowing if you've gone through that tour also. It's just kind of fun walking through it and her like running through it when there's like a little bit of a chase scene in the movie. It's like, oh, that's neat. That's where they would film big, cowboy standoff or big chase scene or something. It was really fun to see. I almost kind of wish they had done even a little bit more, but you're right, and that is probably like
well, they couldn't show too much because some of the stuff that we saw is too modern. And so they had to kind of stick with the things that are like the only other thing they could have tried to have slide in was like maybe the Jaws, but that shows up like on the trolley ride, and everything else is now like Fast and Furious or whatever. But anyway, like it was cool. It was cool because like there is something cool about seeing the sound stages and all the big things where the movies are being made, and then a movie we're watching a movie about a movie, and then it's like you're seeing the movie being made, so it's kind of neat to see all that. So I think from that, because I went to Universal Studios in the 80s, and it felt very much like that, even though like we only got to see a little bit of the lot, and the rest of it was more of the tram and things like that, because it was less theme parky like when you and I went. It was more actually like let's show you how the picture films are made, because
the talkies.
And there was a lot of stuff like that. So the other thing that I thought actually was really good, I mean, obviously soundtrack was,
oh gosh, it was so good. It's perfect, actually. Great 80s soundtrack.
It was funny because it was a very nice compliment, and it didn't
distract.
Right. It didn't distract.
It wasn't like too on the nose. It's such an art, honestly, to score a movie that's supposedly set in the 80s.
Right.
And it's funny, but not a whole lot. Again, like we're saying, there's not a whole lot of people that get it right. Because sometimes it's too on the nose. Oh, you're just picking stuff up from like the top 40 that was playing at that time or whatever. Like they had some good picks for this movie.
It didn't outshine the movie.
Exactly.
And so I like that too. But I feel like what it really nailed, and you probably haven't seen too many of these, but there's the genre of the sleazy 80s movies that they were able to sort of capture. I've seen a couple of them, but I'm trying to think which some of them are off the top of my head. But the one that comes to mind, well, the two that sort of come to mind, obviously Angel is one of the big ones because I feel like there was a certain aesthetic to
Yes,
like.
I agree. And that's, if you haven't seen that, that's actually, I was surprised at how much I ended up liking those movies. It's really good. It's a little bit, I don't know, would it count as exploitation kind of?
That's what I was gonna say. It borderlines. I mean, technically, Angel is like a slasher. It's not.
Oh, huh.
There isn't really. It's only because of the subject matter. It makes it seem like
Okay.
that it is sort of exploitation, but in reality, there's not much nudity in that movie.
That's true. That's true.
And so
A lot of it is implied
yeah.
as far as what her work is.
right. And as an aside, Angel is a movie about a very young underage hooker who is working the streets of LA.
Because she doesn't have anything else.
She has nothing for her. She has no family. She has nothing.
Yeah, she was abandoned. Was
Yeah.
that what it was? Yeah. So
And-
she's just trying to live. She's out on the street. She's doing her thing. She's also going to school at the same time.
She's just trying to make ends meet, pay the
but,
rent.
Nobody at school knows, obviously.
Right.
But she also has this hodgepodge like group of friends that are just
Street performers.
characters.
Like, yeah.
It feels so alive because you definitely have the feel of like how zany LA
Right.
is, at least on kind of the ground level, if you're living that kind of life, kind of on the back alleys and talking to people on the underground and things like that. Just as far as the odd characters that you come across that end up finding themselves in LA.
Yeah.
And it's just it's such a great, I just did not expect to really love those movies, because when you were telling me about them, and I was like, I don't want to watch an underage hooker run around in LA. Why would I want to watch that? But it turned out pretty great because she ends up being a great character. Yeah. She's super sympathetic, but also super kick-ass because she ends up like defending herself and defending her friends. And it's weirdly in its own way, super empowering. Because she knows that nobody's going to save her. She knows she can't really turn to the cops because what do they care about like a street worker that's underage? They don't give a shit.
Right.
So she goes out and kicks ass herself because who else is going to do it? It's rad.
And in that movie, there's also a killer out killing streetwalkers and whatnot. So I feel like, I have to imagine, I would love to hear interviews with Ty West because
I would be shocked if that was not a huge influence on this film.
I feel like it had to have been a pretty major influence. And it's funny because I think I mentioned, I don't know if I mentioned to you or to Jaime on the other podcast or just in talking offline that like Angel, the movie, was like a big video store rental because the poster was very like, I don't want to say shocking, but it was like one of those video store posters that you did not forget.
Right.
And so I feel like the idea there is to draw in people, right? And I feel like when you watch the movie Angel, it has a very 80s aesthetic because it was made in the 80s.
It was literally in the 80s.
And I think they even went as far as like when they film it on Hollywood Boulevard, it was without permits. And so like a lot of what you're seeing is just like guerrilla style.
Love that.
Like guerrilla style shooting. And so this movie didn't have that exactly, but that's okay because those are two different movies. But I bring it up because that movie, it harkened a lot of the things that I like about the grimy, grungy 80s, like gross Hollywood Boulevard because like I said, it was pre tourist attraction. I mean, it was a tourist attraction only in the sense of like of the star the Walk of Fame.
Yeah.
But and you've been there now as of recent, and it wasn't a lot different in the 80s. Like, it smells like pee. It's gross.
Okay. I loved our time in LA. It was a lot of fun, and we ate a lot of good food, and we saw a lot of cool shit. But the whole city smells like piss. And I cannot reconcile the fact how great of a city it is. And literally everywhere we went smelled like pee. And I could not kind of believe it.
Yeah, having lived with cats for as long as we have, like you would think that we could get over like the smell of
you'd think we'd be
like
nose blind to a lot of that
cat pee.
Oh man!
But it turns out like baked in human pee is
rough.
Like way worse.
Rough.
Anyway, this movie felt like you could smell the pee. Not Angel. I'm talking about Maxxine. So I like that about the griminess of the movie.
Not that you could actually smell it.
Yeah, not that I wanted to smell it. I liked our popcorn instead. But Also, I want to say, and I may be wrong, but there's a movie called The Exterminator, which I think takes place in LA. If not, then it would have been like 82nd Street, like in New York. But
it's funny because they feel the same, right? Like
yes.
There's that same amount of kind of griminess and people kind of doing stuff that a lot of like regular people would not want to be doing. Because there are times when we were watching Maxxxine, it's like, wait, is this supposed to be 80s New York or 80s Hollywood?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, because especially like you were saying, they didn't really put a lot of emphasis on like the broad shots of what Hollywood looked like. So it was very easy to like, especially those peep show moments where like you're the point of view of the camera walking into that theater.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, that's right. It's not supposed to be 80s New York.
Her
Because it
apartment,
felt, it felt very, very, very 80s.
Yeah, her apartment, the hot dog stand, like the video store,
right.
all those things, are very tight and narrow. So yeah, it could have been anywhere. But so there's a movie called The Exterminator, and I don't remember if it takes place in
New York City.
Oh, it takes place in New York City. Okay. So, but it has there's a certain griminess to it, and there's a handful of movies, like I know like Basket Case is not. That one's also in New York, but there's something about that grittiness that Maxxxine was able to capture, and I really like that.
Yeah.
And also like the women empowerment sort of sequence. So I will say, like, I think the acting was like really good. Like,
I am such a huge fan of Mia Goth now. Mia Goth. She's incredible, and I don't think anybody else is doing what she's doing these days.
Yeah,
she's amazing, and I will follow her into battle because she's great in this movie, and she's totally believable as this character. And she does, I don't know, like this character just feels so fresh.
It feels authentic.
Yeah, it feels like it could be a real person, and it feels like somebody that would do these things.
Yeah.
She just sells it so hard.
She really
so
is at
good.
another level.
Yeah,
like
she's so great. I'll watch her read the back of a cereal box.
Yeah.
Like, she's amazing.
I loved I don't really think this is a spoiler, but she does the intro monologue when I guess they ask her. I think you see a little bit of this in the trailer where they she's sitting in a chair and she's in a big sound room or sound stage, and the producers and directors are asking her to read, and she performs from the script, or I guess the lines that they have given her to read from, and that was like, I mean, that was really good because like you're literally watching an audition, and granted, of course she's prepared that for this role, but you really bought that, and it really set the tone for the rest of the movie of like, the way that she's very, I have experienced literal trauma, so let me like go find it.
Yeah.
And then like she gives the lines, she cries, and then as soon as she's done, she's like, "Was that good? Like, are we done?"
Switch
like,
off.
Just switch off, and it's like, that was awesome to watch. Like,
it was great. It was so good.
Very believable.
Yeah.
And so I really liked that. I don't know how you say her last name, Elizabeth.
Debicki, something like that.
She's the one from Tenet, right?
Yes.
Okay.
She's a super tall, gorgeous blonde. And she's awesome in this. Honestly, the casting in this whole movie is so great. I kind of loved all of the characters.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
I need Kevin Bacon to be in more sleazy roles forever because he's awesome at it.
Yeah.
It made me think of his role in Wild Things.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Which
it
is
was
so good. I just love when he's gross and sleazy and terrible. He's so good at it.
It's funny, and I don't want to derail too much, but I guess recently he and I guess whenever you're listening to this, recently is subjective or whatever.
Yeah.
He asked some makeup people to make him up to look like somebody else, and so I guess they kind of made him look a little bit like the character in this movie, just kind of
like a normal person.
Yeah, exactly. And then he went out and walked around LA because he wanted to see if anybody would recognize him. No one recognized him. And then he quickly said, "You know what? Being a normal person sucks." Like, because nobody recognizes you. Nobody pays for your coffee.
No
nobody,
favors. No,
yeah, you get,
no freebies.
yeah, exactly. You get nothing free. And so he's like, well, that sucks. But anyway, he was outstanding. He plays a private detective from Nolans. And so he was great. But I feel like,
I think everybody, Giancarlo Esposito.
oh my God.
Yeah, let's put him in everything also.
I want a movie of just him being the agent.
Being the agent, right?
Yes.
I want to learn more about that guy.
He is Maxxine's agent. And
I think that spin-off role is like him as the agent for other
he's just
crazy ass
guy,
people.
Right?
He's amazing. Like, he's give me a series full of that guy.
Yes. Oh my God. I would watch the shit out of that. Like, it would be like Better Call Saul, but the agent version of that.
Right.
You know, I don't want to give away anything that happens in the movie, but he is fantastic.
Yeah,
and
he's great.
His character is well designed and
perfect. Perfect, honestly.
His look is great.
So
too.
good. That weird hair that he
it's
has.
It's like this
good.
weird Italian I don't know what he's doing, but it was great. Like it's sleazy. And I would imagine, man, I would love, maybe I say I love, but I would probably not be super happy with hearing stories of, I'm sure there were lots of agents like that got people into the movies that I watched on VHS, right? Yeah. Like, because, you know, they had to have, someone's got to point people to people and they kind of find them out, and I'm sure like whatever, but yeah, his character was great. Everybody was great. I think like you said, the casting was just outstanding. I think it was really good. Yeah, I mean, there were the only thing I guess I would say is like, and maybe because I'm just a terrible person, but I almost want a little bit more gore. Like I would have.
It's funny you say that because
15% more.
Because there was definitely a lot of it in X, and a decent amount of it in
They
Pearl.
used their budget like to the full.
Yeah,
effect.
they were like, whatever. We have like 3 people in this movie. We're just gonna put a bunch of gore in it. I feel like this would, higher production value. Maybe they wanted to do more things besides gore. But I was kind of looking for a little bit of that gore.
Just a little bit more.
To be honest,
just
a little bit. Because
15%.
the little that we got, like the little nibble, was pretty good. So if they honestly. I was going to be upset if we end up not getting that last one. If you know, you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but the payoff is pretty great. And
funny.
I was going to be upset if that wasn't.
It was funny in a very Peep Show way. It was very like, it felt like a Peep Show at the end, and then it was like,
whoop.
Oh, there it is. And so I'm with you. I'm glad that they actually like sort of
pulled the trigger on some of those.
And so I think that was I thought that was really good. But I mean, it was there were so many good things about it. I do feel though like I don't know if there's gonna be a director's cut or something, because I feel like one sequence about 3/4 of the way through with Kevin Bacon, like I feel like that should have been longer, or like I feel like
I can see that.
There was a build up to it, and then it just kind of, it was good, but it almost feels like it was edited for some reason.
I'll be honest. I feel like as much as I like my movie, I do feel like it had a lot of pieces in it that I think could have been fleshed out more, but nobody really wants to sit through a 3.5 hour long movie to see all of those pieces, because like I kind of wanted a little bit more of the detectives, and you were saying like what happened to that character, and there were a couple other pieces that I was like, it would have been interesting to draw those out a little bit more. I think that's maybe the biggest thing that this particular movie suffers from, is there's so much interesting things that you want to watch,
right?
And there's not nearly enough time for all of them. That's kind of my funny criticism about it, is that like I wanted more.
Well, it's funny, right? Because we talk so often about world building.
Yep.
And Ty West has just done a really good job of world building, and we want to know more about the world he has built, right? And even though it'd be very easy to be like, well, it was the 80s, you can just, read about the 80s, whatever.
Right.
But these are the characters, these are his imaginary characters, or maybe they're based off of real people or whatever. But that's what makes them interesting. And like you said, like, I actually kind of want to know about the detectives. I want to know about all of the characters just a little bit more, but also I don't want to watch, a 6-hour long movie.
Right.
And this movie came in at an hour 44.
Perfect.
Yeah. I mean, it was nice and trim, but it feels like some sequences felt edited,
rushed, maybe.
Yeah.
Or edited funny.
Yeah. And I think it was probably, I'm sure they probably had to go through and were like, look, we're at 2:20. We really should get this down to an hour 45.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, exactly. Because we want to, this isn't high art. It's Maxxxine.
Yeah, well, it's supposed to be sleazy, grimy,
right?
And you don't really want that drawn out too much.
Yeah,
and I think I think his fault is that he made everybody too interesting. You want to keep watching them, whether it pertained to the story or not.
Yeah,
I feel like in contrast to something like his movie X or Pearl, those were just so much more contained,
right?
Because there were very like a very obviously like pandemic movies in that they were like a much smaller stage, much smaller set, much smaller crew. So those were like easier to explore those characters,
right?
Faster even. For something like Maxxxine, it feels much more ambitious and the world is much bigger.
Right.
So I think if I had any criticism, it would be that. I wanted to see more, but
stop making such good movies, Ty West, like with fun characters that we want to see more of. Like,
it's almost like Angel. Like I kind of want to keep seeing Maxxxine do what she does.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's I'm sure it's bittersweet for them that they're closing this out as this is their Return of the King, even though it wasn't like 8 hours long, and we had like multiple endings,
18 goodbyes. Yeah.
I'm sure that they were probably all like, oh, these are such great characters, but like, let's just wrap it up here, right?
Yeah.
Like, let's all.
Yeah, they want to tell a story, and the story that ended up telling was Maxxine's.
Yeah.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, and it's very funny and it's very strange, but we have to really thank the pandemic for this movie, which is strange to say, but it is the truth. Like. The whole, if people are not familiar with the backstory, X was going to be made or was already set up to be made, but then the pandemic hit.
Right.
And
they were in Australia, right? Or
no,
something?
So they were supposed to film stateside, probably Georgia or something like that.
Oh, okay.
And the pandemic, or no, I think either like, if I remember correctly, I want to say like, scheduling and stuff kind of got behind, and so it already became winter time and they couldn't film because it was winter here. And they were like, well, what we could do, we could film in New Zealand because it is summer there. And they were like, we can do that, and we can, because filming in New Zealand has always been a thing because they give you tax breaks and all this stuff. So they went ahead and said, you know what, that's not a bad idea. And somebody was like, we can definitely. He wanted it to look like Texas, and there were a lot of people that were like, trust me, there are parts of New Zealand that we can get to look like Texas. So they agreed. Everybody got on board. And then as I guess they were getting ready to go down there, the pandemic hit. And because they were there and they were already headed there, and I guess everything had already moved, they said, look, we can still do this. But I think they were like, you're going to have to 2 or 3 week quarantine. Ugh. And when they got there, to make sure everybody was safe. And during that time period, Ty West, because, he was just sitting there, had nothing else to do, him and Mia Goth were like, hey, so what if we write a script, like a prequel to X for fun, for funsies, and flesh out this character because the character of Pearl is in X. And so they write out this script, and they were able to do it during the quarantine time. They wrote the whole thing, got it all flushed out, and they went as far as said, you know what? I think we can even film this too if we wanted to.
Why not?
And so they pitched it. They pitched it to A24 and said, look, I think I can give you 2 movies for one, because we already have the sets.
Right.
We're going to have them. If we make it a prequel that takes place in the same house as the original, we just have to we'll just have to reset, reshoot. We already have the actors here that we could use, or I guess they could bring in a couple extras. They were using Weta Workshops, who are based out of New Zealand, to do the special effects and the practical effects. And so X was such a huge hit that they went ahead and greenlit Pearl, but they went ahead and let them film it because they were like, well, we're already on the dime. And during the time of the pandemic, they're like, well, if we can get 2 movies for one, why not? Let's do it. And both were such a huge success that it gave us
for nothing, probably.
Yeah, it gave us Maxxxine because, they were like, well, let's go ahead and finish out the story.
Yeah.
And so as much as the pandemic sucked and still sucks, it's kind of a neat little thing. Like I don't want this to be the We All Love Ty West podcast, but you have to give it to people, right? That take their creativity and push it when what else do you have to do? I'm quarantining, so what else can I do?
Yeah.
I guess I'll write.
Kind of in the most challenging possible time, honestly.
Make the most of your situation and
why not?
Roll with it.
Otherwise you go crazy.
Yeah. So thanks, pandemic, but
but
kind of wish you had never come by.
Go away.
Whatever. Yeah, go away forever. But thanks for the
thanks
Ty
for
West trilogy.
All the fish. Yeah.
Speaking of fish.
Oh.
Let's pair this up with something to eat. So we talked a lot about the aesthetic. I feel like I'm curious to see what you think in terms of where you may go in a direction for food for this one. Do you have an idea of where you might want to go?
So this was really hard for me in a lot of ways because mostly because I feel like it feels so LA that I want to pair it with something quintessentially from LA. But for only because we've only been there once and I've never been there again, and I don't really know much about LA, to be honest.
Sure.
But that in that sense, it's really hard for me to be like, what you should get in LA is, how when you're in New York, you should definitely get a pizza, New York pizza, or a New York hot dog, or one of those halal cart type deals. Very specific kind of food signatures. I feel like LA, for honestly, for the better, doesn't really have that because it's such a huge tapestry of different neighborhoods and different cultures and different food identities, which is what I love so much when we went. That it's actually hard for me to nail down something that feels like that, other than something that's which they actually eat in the movie, street food. I feel that I think if anything, except in some places, I think they're trying to ban it. I think that feels very uniquely LA, because it's, or at least it was, I don't know if it is anymore, because I know there was some movement against the food carts a year or two ago. But that felt very uniquely LA because there's not a whole lot of other places in the country that allow that permit-wise.
Sure.
Obviously there was New York because they have the usual stuff, the hot dogs and the
Feed
halal carts and
Or but, I should say street workers and as in construction people.
Right.
But also if street worker, anybody who's working the street.
Anybody
Cops,
who's on the street.
Robbers.
Everything in between.
Yeah, everything in between.
But just, New York feels a little different too because you read more and more about how kind of the New York landscape operates as far as those go. It's actually super expensive to operate those kinds of carts, and they have a commissary situation and the whole deal. And I'm sure there's something similar in LA, but I feel like at least it used to, like I said, I don't know if it's still the case, but it feels much more democratic as far as there's a taco stand, there's a hot dog stand, there's all kinds of stuff. And I love that so much. In when we were in LA, we didn't have to go too far to find good food.
Yeah.
For as much as we had to drive around to see certain things, it was like, what's good around here? Oh, this is like kind of the Asian side. This is
Right.
like the Japanese neighborhood. We'll get some Japanese food.
Right.
And there was never, I can't think of anything bad that we had.
Yeah.
It
No, you're
was
right.
all so good, and it was so easy to access, and nothing was ever like too expensive. If you didn't want to go to like the high end, James Beard kind of places. So I honestly, like, what I would think of the most to want to pair with a movie like this is some kind of, it makes me think of a particular place out in LA. We didn't get a chance to go, but I wanted to go at some point. It just, we were only there for a few days. I think it's in LA anyway. There's a place called Dollar Hits, where it's a Filipino place, and it's like skewered grilled items.
Oh, okay.
So they just have this huge grill set up, and you pay by the skewer. And I think that's why it's called Dollar Hits. It's like the cheapest steak you can get is about $1.
Right.
It kind of goes up from there, but you get as many as you want, and then I think they grill it for you. So it's kind of what is it called? It's kind of like those Mongolian barbecue places,
Okay.
except it's just skewers,
Right.
and they're open until like 2 a.m. or something crazy like that. You go out after you come from the club, or you're on the way home from wherever, and you just sit there and eat some cheap grilled food, and that feels like really LA.
Is it a food cart, like a food truck, or is it like a?
I think I want to say they have a restaurant. I can't
Okay.
remember.
Because I'm not familiar with it, but the way you describe it, it almost sounds like very. If there was like there were a couple of places like this. I think we had some tacos at a place somewhere off
Yes,
the strip where
so good.
it was an open like to the outside. So I'd imagine at night, and I wish we had gone back down. I really wanted to show you like Hollywood Boulevard at night with all with whatever neon is like up. And I think like at the time, and this is pre-pandemic, so it would have been like I forget the name of it, the Cinerama, I think, or
okay. Yeah.
the dome. I wanted you to see some of the neon,
Sure.
but we didn't get to catch that. But I what you're describing of that place, it almost
Okay.
sounds like you kind of sit outside and they have like
I think that's the general idea. So this is, I just looked it up. They're out in West Covina, which is kind of not too far, I guess. I don't really know. It's like to the east of LA proper. And yeah, it looks like, I don't know. I'll have to look it up. But it's like authentic street food experience, Filipino street food experience. And that's what, there's nothing in the movie about it being Filipino or anybody eating
Sure.
anything like that. But that's what it makes me think of, is like,
street food.
I want to get something cheap, something hot, and like still comforting and tasty, and something that goes down well with like a cold beer.
Right.
When, after a long day at work,
Right.
street walking or not.
Yeah.
Whatever it is you do, you just want to go and eat some cheap like food that's tasty and still hot and warms your tummy, maybe a little bit greasy because
Sure.
you're drinking a beer,
Right.
and it goes down well with the beer.
Yep.
That's what it makes me think of, like that, or like those little taco shops that we were talking about. That's just like they're open until like 3 or 4 in the morning,
Right.
and it's like, whatever, who wants to go to sleep when you're in LA? So you just want to wander around the streets and see who's open,
Yeah, and so it sounds like what you're describing to me, like I was saying, and it sounds like that's the way that they have it there too, right? Which is like little metal stools where you kind of sit on the outside. There's like neon and sort of that yellowish sort of tint that you're kind of talking to people on just the other side, and they're telling you about what it used to be like here on the strip or whatever. I mean, I know they're not on the strip, but tying it back to Maxxxine, I feel like if it was in the background of Maxxxine, you would see people there, like
Totally.
the occasional like kind of come by and get there, like you said, have a beer while they're like getting ready for their the second wave of energy to hit them.
Yeah.
So they can go from like
go to the second
1
job.
a.m. until like 4 a.m. or whatever.
Right.
Before they go to the valley or wherever, or they're going to go to the hills near the Hollywood sign. No, that totally makes sense. I like that. And I think the grill, like the smoky grill.
Yeah.
I think is very, I think you can almost kind of smell that in this movie, like just based on some of the visuals. So yeah, I could totally buy that for appearing. So it's funny because I was thinking about it on the way home, and the first thing that came to my mind, and hopefully I haven't said this before and other things, but if there's a good chance I'm probably going to repeat a couple of things that I would pair movies with, but this one in particular, I would feel like if I was on the street during this time era, and let's just say they were filming movies like a Maxxxine or, something else like Angel, and it's being filmed while we're there. I think I would probably from somewhere on the strip. I'm sure they would probably have this, but you can get like a slice of pizza, but a big ass slice of pizza on the paper plate that's super greasy.
So greasy.
And you have to kind of fold it in a taco. Only cheese or only pepperoni. It's one of the two. And it's like the relatively thin crust. And you're like on the side of the street eating it as you're watching like movies. Like you're watching like people running around like, oh, I think they're shooting some of the scenes of this movie over there. I don't know if they have permission, but so you would probably see me in a movie like Angel in the background, like eating pizza, watching them because they're like, well, they're not supposed to be doing this. And I'm just happen to be here. So I'm kind of eating my pizza. But I would down that with a new Coke. Not Coke Classic, but new Coke.
So what is new Coke again?
So Coca-Cola up in, I guess, I forget when they were invented. I guess it was post-World War II, I think.
Okay.
So it was just Coca-Cola. It was soda pop. And up until the 80s.
That's when it still had like cocaine or something in it, right?
Yeah, supposedly. I guess, yeah, it had a little bit of
just a little taste.
Yeah, little hit. But so Coke up until the 80s, because I feel they were feeling the pressure that Pepsi was going to, like, Pepsi was the choice of a new generation, and they were starting
I remember that campaign too.
They were starting to really push to get themselves up to a point where it's like, oh, they're the new, like, they're going to be the new soda for everybody. Coke felt threatened, and so they decided to change the Coca-Cola formula so that people were like, oh, they've changed it up. And I guess they didn't say that the idea was to make it taste like Pepsi, but all they said was they were going to change the formula. And so when they did, it was new Coke.
Okay.
And the bottle never said new Coke, but everybody referred to it as new Coke because it's the new formula. And so the can, actually, they show it in Maxxxine, and I think they did that on purpose to kind of like strike where we are in the era. But the Coke can looked different, and it looked very simple and I guess you could say elegant. Because I think Pepsi had come out and they also were very simple and had like a sleek logo. And so they did this and everybody hated it.
The taste?
It tastes bad. Like it tastes what a lot of us would say is like the Coke tasted flat. Like it tasted like
interesting.
Not bubbly. It didn't have like its pop.
Okay.
And so there's always been, and I don't know if this is true or not, it almost seems like marketing urban legend because no company would like to admit to mistakes. But marketing people have always said like, oh, this was the greatest ploy of all time because they only did that so they could bring back Coke and called it Coca-Cola Classic. And then it was like this, it was like this huge, like, oh, thank God, Coke Classic is back and like it's better than new Coke. And so like sales just went to the roof because everybody loved it. And then they started.
But it was the same formula from before New Coke?
Well, and that's the thing. Like, there was so much new Coke out there that I guess because I remember for a period there, both were on the shelves. Like if you could find the Coke before the formula was changed, people were buying those, and then it was just new Coke on the shelves.
Weird.
And so I think what they ended up doing was they may have recalled or pulled back the old ones, relabeled them with the new. It would say classic,
yeah.
and then Coca-Cola. And that was like, I think maybe their way of doing it. And so it was like this huge campaign of classic Coke. And I don't know, it's all fucking capitalism. and I just want a fucking nice cold Coca-Cola. But yeah, in the movie Maxxxine, they particularly show the new Coke can when the detectives grab one. Mm-hmm. And so I would pair this, like I said, with probably just a regular cheese sliced pizza on the white paper plate. That's like, usually they give you the double paper plate.
Yeah, because they're so flimsy.
And it's fucking greasy as hell.
It's
There's just grease everywhere, and that first plate takes up all the grease. Yeah. And this movie is so slimy and greasy and gnarly that like I feel like that grease has to kind of go with that, and then you wash it down with just a flat ass
gross
new Coke.
Yeah,
with like, the hopes that it's super cold, but it probably isn't.
But it's like because it's hot in LA. It probably won't stay cold very long.
Yeah, that smell of just human pee is just like baking in everywhere. So, well, yeah. So I think that ties this up. I think
I would say I would recommend this movie if you're already a fan of Ty West.
Is it a chef special?
I don't. It's hard to say because I liked X a lot more. Like I feel like out of the three, X would undoubtedly be like a chef special.
Yeah,
I would say. I don't know. I don't think so, honestly. Maxxxine, for as much as I loved it, and I love everything about it, probably not.
Yeah.
Because it has to stand up against X and Pearl, and I feel like, especially against X, I would definitely like gobble up X first.
Yeah, I would agree. Like, I really like the movie too, but I don't think it's a chef special. Mm-hmm. That said, I want to like. I would love to revisit this movie again, and it may change my mind. I mean, we literally just watched it
an hour ago.
40 minutes to an hour ago, and so it's still fresh. And so it'd be very easy to say it is a chef special, but I agree. Like, I really like going back to X. I think it's great.
Yeah,
and I think it brings back a lot of good memories of those types of movies and a video store era because it feels like a video store movie. And I also like the idea of movies about movies when they're done well.
Yeah.
And this is, I mean, X is technically a movie about a movie, even though it is a porno movie. This one's a movie about a movie. And I don't know, there's something like I would imagine for Hollywood people, I'm sure it just means the world to them that movies about movies are being made.
Yeah, they'd love that shit.
Yeah. But I feel like when you're on the outside and have done short films like me, like, it's a little different, but it also is fun. Like I like it, but yeah, I don't think I would put it on the chef special, but I'm sure whenever this comes out, we're gonna watch it again. It would actually kind of be fun to watch them in the order, like Pearl, X, and then Maxxxine.
Yeah.
And just make it like a triple.
Yeah.
Like a triple threat, sort of movie, and just kind of maybe we will grill up some food for that, or
that'd be a whole menu, I feel like.
I think we could make a menu around that. I think that would be kind of fun. Well, all right. It's I don't know when this episode's coming out, but it is Friday night for us, and I feel like there's still I think we got like a Friday night movie we can watch. I don't know what we're gonna watch, but I feel like we should.
Well, you keep talking about we should watch Jaws. Just for the sake of it being Jaws.
Well, it's summertime.
In the summertime.
Summertime right now.
Yeah.
And I feel like you got to have that feeling of the heat.
Yeah, you got to have a little bit shark in your summer.
I could do that. It's actually not super hot today because I would say like Little Texas Chainsaw Massacre to bring in that heat, that Texas heat, but maybe not that. I don't know. We'll figure out something, but we'll see what we got.
Maybe almost time for another Midsommar rewatch.
Oh, it is almost time for that.
Some hot
like
girl summer. Yeah. Hot bear summer.
Well, let's go rummage the pantry for some snacks. And let's figure out what we're gonna watch tonight. But
yeah, I'm hungry.
Yeah. Well, 3 thumbs up for X.
Out of how many?
I don't know. Just
how many thumbs
it's
are we
because
doing?
it's XXX. So
fair enough.
Yeah.
3 X's for Maxxxine.
Yes. Go watch it. Have something.
Yeah. yes, highly recommend. It's a lot of fun. Don't take it too serious. Enjoy the delicious soundtrack.
Yes. All right, let's go get us a little something to snack on. Go watch
Greasy
some
pizza?
movies. Yep.
Sounds good.
All right, love you.
Love you too.